Hey, welcome back. Okay, so we've talked about kinds of love. We've talked about media influences, infatuation. We've discovered the relationship triangle and bonding. This is all a lot to take in. So I hope you're taking the time to pause, talk about it, think about it. If you're looking for resources from where I got my information, I'd love to share them with you. And if you have things to share with me, I love that. Students through the years have just emailed me some of um, their favorite resources. So you can contact me through Darlene, Darlene, true to you, at gmail.com. So Darlene, true to you, gmail.com. So this last bit for a while, we'll see when I'll do the next series, is going to be in answer to the question, so what? So what now? Some of you are saying, I've had a lot of connecting and disconnecting. This explains some of the struggles I've been having. Or some of you are thinking, well, so moving forward, how do I find somebody that I want to share my life with? And if it's not through experimenting physically, then what do I do? Oh, by the way, I just realized I'd forgotten to mention that we also get oxytocin as we head down the emotional line of progression, right? Of course, as you share your heart with somebody, you get oxytocin, you start bonding. So that's why sometimes people will start to feel really close to somebody when they are online and have never actually met them in person, never held their hand, never given them a kiss, but they're devastated if that person breaks up with them, or if they've been catfished and found out this is not who they presented themselves to be. So all of that to say, the oxytocin starts affecting the emotional as well. And so that's why, when we think about how we're going to proceed, sometimes I'm asked, so how am I supposed to know when when this is eros versus agape? And I'll have some suggestions for you. But first of all, I want you to answer the question that I asked you at the very beginning and a little bit throughout. What do you want, and what are you willing to do to get it? So if, and I'm not assuming all of you want to marry, but if you would marry, if you would find somebody that you want to spend the rest of your life with, what would it look like? What would the relationship look like? What would be the components of that relationship? Would you want to feel respected? Would you want to respect them? Would you want to feel trust and dependability? Would you want to have adventure? But let's bring it down to, what kind of person can you imagine sharing your life with? If you want to add anything to this list, feel the freedom. It's not exhaustive, as I said. It just gives you a starting point. There might be things you want to add to it, like, I don't know, really great at Minecraft, or loves tennis. You can put all kinds of things, but these would be traits to kind of get you started. I know for me, trustworthy, the second one from the top, the green, was really important to me. And when I was dating and spending time with different ones, I wanted to find out if they were actually people that said what they meant. Other people trusted them and could depend on them, because I knew if I couldn't trust somebody, I couldn't respect them. And that's a huge deal for me. Shared faith was a big deal for me, as I know it is for some of you. But you can't have all of these things. I mean, you can't have an outgoing and shy person, like you can see the last two. But you can just say, if I could choose, this would be the person that I would choose. And then I'm going to suggest that you go ahead and, if you are a person of faith, pray for them. Like whatever you are imagining and hoping, that you realize that person is out there somewhere and they need some courage to keep looking and to keep to kind of keep a sense of who they are, so they don't get beaten up by those around them. Life can be pretty challenging, right? Circle the non-negotiables on your list. Like, you've chosen a whole great list, but circle the ones that are essential to you. Sorry. As I mentioned, to me, trustworthy was the one I circled. But even though I wanted somebody musical, I was okay if they weren't. Turns out he was. But that wasn't a deal breaker. You get to decide what are your deal breakers. And It's kind of a contract you make with yourself. Remember that during infatuation, anyways, and the more bonded somebody becomes, the less they're actually able to see that person clearly. So it's something you can pull out from your nightstand or wherever you keep it. I've heard people talk about different places they kept their list. And as they're spending time with an individual and they're deeply attracted, they're able to go, you know what? I made a promise to myself that this was something that would be essential. I wasn't going to budge on this one. Don't settle. Think about, your future. Think about, for some people, it takes thinking, oh, would I want, this person is so not dependable. Do I want that in maybe the father of my children or the mother of my children? Or a business partner, because you might go into business or shared finances, right? Think ahead. Put your prefrontal cortex into action. And then go ahead and become the kind of person you're looking for. So if you said, I want a trustworthy person, how are you practicing trustworthiness right now? If you said, I want a person who's patient, how's your patience doing, right? So sometimes people are saying, you know what? I just feel like I'm waiting forever. And man, I'm so grateful. I've had people tell me about the wish list and how they've used it to actually call out attraction and go, yeah, I'm attracted, but that's still not somebody I want to share my life with. And some have been actually told, you know what? Your standards are too high. You need to lower them. And then years later, they'll say, I waited and I'm really glad I did, because this person is the kind of person that I want to share everything with. These questions are so important. Is this what getting you closer to or further from what you really want? This was the question that was posed to a lady I met. She was a counselor at a school, and she gave me permission to tell this story. She had heard my presentation. It's not really a production. Can you tell us later in the day? And a presentation. And she went home, and she said all her daughter's friends were there. And they're in university, and her friend rushed in because she also has a part-time job. And she pulled her aside, and let's call her Mrs. C. Mrs. C, I wanted to talk to you. In front of everybody, she stopped and said, Mrs. C, you're really wise. What should I do? Do you think I should sleep with my best friend's boyfriend? And the whole room kind of paused and gulped and looked at Mrs. C. And Mrs. C had some very strong thoughts and opinions about this, as you might, if you're listening to this. But instead of giving her advice or her suggestions, she decided to ask questions instead. Questions are powerful. And she asked her, what do you want? She goes, what do you mean do I want? She goes, no, what do you really want? What do you want in a life partner? She goes, oh, I know. And she whipped out her phone from her back pocket and scrolled to notes. And in it, she said, look, I have my list. And on the very top of her list was the word trustworthy. And Mrs. C very wisely said, so would this be getting you closer to or further from what you want? Is he trustworthy? And the girl's eyes went. And she said, and are you trustworthy if you sleep with your best friend's boyfriend? And she was shocked. While the party continued around her, Mrs. C said her face just kind of fell, and she slumped down on a chair and sat there staring blankly out into space, while Mrs. C sat down beside her and wondered, did I break her? Like, is she going to be okay? After about 5 long minutes, she shook herself out of it and said, I gotta go. And she got up and raced out the door. Mrs. C didn't see her for 2 weeks, and suddenly heard a knock at the door, opened it up, and there she is, dressed in a cute little business suit, saying, Mrs. C, I want to thank you so much for your advice 2 weeks ago. She didn't really give her advice, did she? She asked her questions that revealed what was going on and what was really going on, what she really wanted. And she said, you know what? I realized that I had to quit my job. What? What does that have to do with anything? I had to quit my job because I was bartending, and it was becoming an environment where I was just, any cute person who invited me to sleep with them that night, I would have sex with them. And it was starting to change the way I viewed myself and the way I viewed sex, so that when my best friend's boyfriend asked me, it kind of seemed like, maybe I should. And I couldn't believe how far I'd strayed from what I really wanted. And she said, when you asked the question about trustworthy, It just all came into place. So I quit my job, and I had already trained as a bank teller, but I'd left that because it made better money and tips at bartending. So I returned to bank telling. She goes, you know what? I respect myself more, and people treat me with more respect. It's pretty great. And all because of a really great question. So while we don't often want advice from those who are just going to tell us what to do, we often really do need some guidance. So I'm just encouraging you to use that question with your friends when they're looking to you. Now there's the wish list, but then there's how are you going to find out who this person really is, right? So they can present a certain way, but that doesn't mean that's who they are. We all know people who are very charming initially, or they present really well, but that's not who they are. And that's why I love talking about dating. And when I talk about dating, I talk about going on an actual date. You're like, Darlene, really, dating is so gone. In fact, I've had some people tell me people don't date anymore. And I'm like, well, I believe in bringing dating back. And dating is simply setting a time and a place to be with someone to do something. Like I do a coffee date with my friend this week, and I'm doing a shopping date with my mom, and I'm doing a kayaking date with my husband, and I'm right. So they're not all having to be romantic. It's simply, setting up a time to do something. And so before it even has to get romantic, here's some creative dates like watching a sports event live, hiking a mountain trail, dressing up in super fancy clothes, and going to McDonald's. Cooking a meal together for one of your families, or taking a coin flip trip. Every time you come to a stop sign, you flip a coin to decide which way to turn. Heads right, tails left, whether you're biking or walking or driving. None of these cost money, really. Like a sports event, there are sports events happening all the time that don't cost anything to attend. As I was driving here, there was, a rugby game, a baseball game, and a polo tournament actually just down the road. So you don't have to pay to just watch these ones. There's no entrance fee. And what are you going to discover about somebody when you watch a sports game with them, right? And how are they treating the umpire? How are they treating the people who just dropped popcorn all over them, right? Do they just quit when their team's losing? Hiking a mountain trail when they get a stone in their shoe. Is it your fault? Is it all over? Are they complaining? Are they embarrassed highly? Do they leave garbage everywhere? As one teacher interrupted a class and said, she left her cup at the waterfall. And I said, let's go back and get it and throw it in the garbage. And she said, no, somebody else will get it. He goes, that was a deal breaker for me. I'm like, oh, okay. Again, we're not looking for perfection, but we want to walk into relationships with our eyes wide open. Who is this person? Is this something I can handle? Or is this something that would have to change? And would it be a real change if they changed? Dressing up in fancy clothes, that's just having fun. But is that person too self-conscious to dress up in like grad prom clothes and going to McDonald's? Now, don't surprise them as you're going out the door saying, oh, by the way, we're just going to McDonald's. That might be a bit much, but just prepare them. And if they go, no, I don't want to do that, they might be shy, or they just might be, you get to discover, right? And watch how they treat the person who serves them. It's amazing how much we discover when we are watching others and we experience ourselves with someone who's actually nothing we can gain from treating them well, except treating them well. Cooking a meal together, you find out how controlling they are, how messy. Do they clean up their own mess? Is it embarrassing? Too embarrassing for them if it doesn't turn out perfectly? Is it your fault? The coin flip trip, can they just enjoy being with you no matter what? Now, this is one of like a ton of dates. I have an Instagram, which I don't keep very up to date, but I do keep, if you would want them, a series of really great dates for under $25. In fact, when I'm in some schools or organizations, I often will offer a prize for the best date under $25. So I have tons of them. It doesn't have to be expensive. And I'm going to encourage you to start dating now. You're like, wait, I don't have anybody. Oh, hey, I wasn't saying necessarily romantically. Plan an event. Do something with people purposefully. Because if somebody calls you up to say, hey, let's hang out, and do what? You are worth asking, and do what? And if they don't have any idea, we'll just hang out. You can say, well, when you do know, let me know, and I'll be able to give you an answer. You're worth somebody spending a little bit of time on thinking what they want to do with you and where and how. And the more events you get used to planning and inviting people to, whether it's a group of friends or just one friend, the more you find out that you're actually living. You're not waiting for somebody to share your life with. You're already sharing your life with people who matter to you. And when you're on those dates, you're able to discover, do they have some of the qualities of a healthy relationship, like a comfortable pace? There's trust, there's honesty, there's independence. You don't have to be with each other 24/7. Is there mutual respect and equality? Is there kindness? Are they taking responsibility? Is there healthy conflict so you can disagree and find a way through it? Are you having fun? Or is it pretty much focused on a lot of intensity and possessiveness? Is there manipulation in it? Isolation, sabotaging or belittling, making you feel small, guilting you, a volatility to them? Is there a deflecting of responsibility or betrayal? These are giant red flags. And either something has to change in the relationship or it's time to let it go. Maybe I'll save that for a different video. You're asking questions like, what's on their social media feed? You're going to find out like what kind of songs they listen to on their playlist. And you'll discover things about how they present themselves to the world. I mean, if they're listening to songs that demean human beings, right? Then you're a human being, right? And that if you're the only one they treat well, then it's only really a matter of time before they're treating you the way they've trained their brain to treat others. It's pretty cool how much we can find out over time. And building a friendship with somebody, a relationship, is not something you'll regret. Whereas jumping into something that's romance laden, only to have to lose the friendship and the romance at the same time, is pretty challenging. So a real love versus a passion, agape versus eros. I'm going to suggest to you that eros will never wait for sex until marriage. It's like, I need what I want right now. What I'm unwilling to think of your best interest. Whereas agape actually might insist on it, because knowing that such a significant thing happens when you have sex, it actually is something that I keep saying actually, it's something that changes the relationship so significantly. It changes the brain, it changes the hormones, it changes the sense of commitment. And if the commitment doesn't actually come to fruition, it can be devastating for somebody. So if you are thinking, maybe I'm going to back things up in the future. I've been sexually active, but I want to relook at this because I want to wait to see if I can trust this person. I want to wait to see if this person is who they say they are. I want to wait because I'm just recovering from other relationships. I don't want to unnecessarily be bonded to somebody. Well, first of all, it's really easy to get turned on. And no matter your age, attraction's a real thing. So if you don't plan ahead to avoid situations where you'll have to say no or set boundaries, then you can find yourself suddenly being in a compromising position and feeling uncomfortable with setting a boundary. That's why it's so important to be able to talk about boundaries really early on. As I mentioned in the video, I think about the relationship triangle, there was a couple who shared with me that before they had their first date, they talked about the triangle to find out if they could be on the same page or not. Brilliant. Everybody has boundaries. It's just, what are yours? So if you are a person who's not good at setting boundaries with your friends, I strongly suggest that it's too early for you to think about romantic relationships, because you're adding that extra level of pressure, the extra level of intensity that makes it even more difficult for you to stand up for yourself or to be able to set a boundary for yourself. When you set a boundary for yourself and say, I don't do that, or I don't want to do that, that is not saying that there's anything wrong with that person having a different boundary. You're just choosing for yourself to respect yourself, because we protect what we value. And if you value your heart, if you value your body, if you value your future relationships, then you actually want to consider setting really great boundaries. So you might lose a boyfriend or a girlfriend you really like, but you'll never lose a boyfriend or girlfriend who really likes you. I love the examples that are out there. There's one of my favorites. Her name's Ashley Graham. She's a rookie swimsuit model for Sports Illustrated. And she described a guy that she dated after she'd had a series of horrific relationships. And she said, he cooked for me. We went roller skating. Let me see, rollerblading. And biking. We did karaoke, went to the movies, took an improv class together because we weren't sleeping together. For him, abstinence, which is a term for waiting, abstinence was a firm commitment. We never tempted ourselves by going over to each other's apartments late at night, but we'd go to late movies or take walks through the city together. And when they got married, this was their interview in Glamour magazine in 2017. She's giving a really great roadmap for how to date, stay active, stay in public places. Otherwise, it's harder, right? And stay away from alcohol. What we know about alcohol, and actually the number one date rape drug in Canada is alcohol because it lowers people's judgment, right? And the second is actually marijuana. Again, their judgment doesn't go up, it goes down. And thirdly, roofies or Rohypnol, white, odorless, tasteless pills that can be dropped into a drink. So if you're at a party and you don't know everybody loves you and will take care of you and respect you, and you probably want to take your drink with you. And if you go to the bathroom or something, you probably want to start with a fresh drink. So only put yourself in scenarios where you can say no. Here's a checklist that one girl shared with me about her boundaries, what she will or won't do. I'll not get into the back seat of a parked car with my date. Check this out. I will not be in any bedroom with the door closed with my date. I will not go inside my date's house if no one else is at home. I will not explore under my date's clothing. I will not watch movies, videos, or look at magazines which I know will arouse me sexually before or during being with them. I will not send any pics that I could not send to Grammy. Really interesting. But you know what? Sometimes people are like, yeah, girls have stronger boundaries. It's like, do you remember when I shared this with you in the Relationship Triangle series? You may have wondered what the blue line that goes from long kiss over to close to marriage is all about. That's a young man who told me that he waited for his long kiss until engagement. And I was like, really? What made you do that? And he said, well, I just realized that I wanted to save that part for marriage. I don't want to ask the question, how far can I go before marriage? I wanted to ask, how much do I want saved? And I wanted to be able to kiss my wife, a long kiss. So when I asked her to marry me and she said yes, it was like, okay, I know that this is somebody that I'm going to be enjoying for the rest of my life. And so we can learn together how to enjoy each other. And he was teased at work. He finished university and they were like, seriously? Like, how do you even know she's a good kisser? And he goes, she's the best kisser I've ever had. And what if, how are you going to, figure this all out? He goes, we'll figure it out together. It's going to be great. And they've been married, I can't remember how many years now. And he said, yeah, we've figured out we're really enjoying it. So the whole idea that you have to be an expert on something before you meet somebody you want to share your life with just doesn't really add up. If somebody loves you, they will protect you. If somebody loves you, they will respect you. They won't make decisions that could jeopardize your physical, mental, and relational health and limit your ability to reach your dreams and goals. Depression and sexually transmitted infections and unplanned pregnancies, those are things that really change a life. And those are things that sometimes we don't like talking about because in relation to romantic relationships, because it's like we sour the whole thing, but it doesn't have to be that way. A love test, an agape test, is take sex out of the equation, right? So if somebody really loves you, like agape, then they will be willing to go through the, wow, so this is not part. I know this to be true because, okay, how do I explain it? I was teaching some workshops to hockey girls, and they're players, a women's team, and I was sharing this on Monday, and on Wednesday, I came back to their class, and one girl walked in. She goes, well, now I know it's Eros because I said, oh, we're going to take sex out of the equation. And he said he dumped me right there. So I realized, oh, he just wanted my body. He didn't want me. And another girl came behind her and said, well, I said, I'm taking sex out of the equation. He goes, okay, I don't understand, but I love you. We'll figure this out. And she said, do you want to talk to Darlene about it? And he goes, sure, because you really mattered to me. And this doesn't have to be like the center of our relationship. Wow. I'm not saying you play a game with somebody to test them. I'm just saying that sex changes things. It always, always changes things. And if you want to be able to walk through a relationship with your eyes wide open, you want to know that that person actually has self-control. I love this quote from a guy named Tony. And he said at the bottom there, the same self-control it took for me to not have sex with Julie while we were dating is the same self-control it takes for me not to cheat on her now that we're married. I think it's interesting that Ciara and Russell Wilson, he was a famous football player, or is, and she's a hip hop dancer, and they married after a year and a half of dating. But before they were married, they had kind of shaken everything up in the celeb world because they said they weren't having sex. And they're like, wait a second, dude, you are divorced, so you've had sex before, and Ciara, you have a baby from another guy? You know, what's going on here? And they said, you know what? We have decided, and there's amazing write-ups that they've done on it to the point where they could pretty much explain the relationship triangle. They said you can always come back to the friendship, but sex often messes with people and they're not able to make clear decisions. And we want to have that foundation of friendship. Well, you know, they married a year and a half later, as you can see, at a Scottish castle, like we all do. And their resulting trust in each other, do you think it went up or down as a result of waiting until marriage? He travels extensively throughout North America. She travels to Europe for weeks at a time. Do you think they trust and respect each other more or less as a result of waiting until marriage? Well, they would say more, and that would fit with the other research. The effects of waiting until marriage on marital intimacy, even if it's having sex with the person who you later marry, you have more trust and respect for them. As my friend Mia said when we were traveling through Nepal, she said, my husband's home alone with the boys, but he waited till he was 30 to have sex with me. So you know what? I think he's able to wait 3 weeks while we're gone. Like, yeah. But that's wild. It sounds like jealousy and insecurity go way down if you know that person has chosen to wait. There's a pretty famous person that a lot of people know. I mean, I have a whole bunch of slides on this, on different celebrities who decide to wait for marriage. And again, very individual choice, very personal choice that you don't often see people talking about openly. And one was, her name was Phoebe in Friends, Lisa Kudrow, and she talks about how she waited until she was 32 to have sex in real life. So the person that she played on screen was not the person that she was in real life. And when asked why, she goes, "It's an odd decision for everybody, but I wanted to be waiting, knowing that this is a very special thing. I really only wanted to share with one person in my life." So kudos to her for being, get it, Lisa Kudrow. No, kudos to her for actually being open. I don't even like puns. What happened there? To being open about something that is so counterculture. The reason I share some of this and these stories is I want you to see it as a viable alternative. Alternative to what the media would suggest and to what many people talk about. And when somebody feels the pressure to do something that they really are not ready for unless they're in a committed lifelong relationship, it's a significant pressure, especially if they don't have any ideas of any real people who have done this. People who are not presented by the media as ugly, stupid, socially awkward, unsuccessful, but people who are very successful, people who have decided, this is actually a big deal. And when you say no to somebody, it's a complete sentence. It doesn't require justification or explanation. And yet, if in terms of boundaries, you can let people know, I really like you, but I'm saying this for my husband. He's so worth it. Or I really like you, but I'm saving sex for my wife. She's so worth it. Whatever it is. For that one young man, he wanted to wait for a long kiss until engagement. These are personal decisions that if you have somebody not respecting you, your boundaries, then they're not respecting you. And that's a deal. And saying no isn't rejection. It's just no. Canadians, we're kind of famous for just being nice and apologizing all the time. And so we don't have a lot of experience being able to communicate clearly and respectfully our boundaries. And so we need to practice this a lot. I encourage people to think about being clear and direct with their words, tone, and body language, pulling away or turning from. Not just using their words, but if they're saying no, but being shy and kind of, whatever, remembering that the biggest sex educator is porn, and porn scripts are often filled with people saying no, but really meaning yes. So being very clear, replace I can't with I won't, instead of I can't, my roommate's there, saying I won't. Because if it's about the roommate, they'll help you find an alternative. People who pressure you are not necessarily evil people. Like, they're not even trying to force. A lot of times they haven't really thought about sex and they're considering this is what everyone's doing and it's no big deal and it's the biggest deal. And so if you don't have an opportunity to explain really clearly to them what you believe about, what your boundaries are, then they can just make assumptions. And I think it's really important to realize you don't have to argue and you don't have to apologize. You can just say, this is really important to me. And I need you to respect this. See, you can't force someone to respect you, but you can refuse to be disrespected. And sometimes the pressure can come from other adults. Sometimes the pressure can come from friends who just don't want you to, be left out, and they don't get it. So many people just don't understand oxytocin. And once this information gets to them, they get how it's a significant decision for people, whether they've had sex before or not, that it actually changes a lot of things. And if anyone would ever say to you, I'm going to break up with you because you're not having sex with me, I suggest you send them a thank you card. Let them know, fantastic. Now you've let me know how you view me and how lightly you treat sex. And if they're not willing to respect you, then that's a really good chance that that'll be, consistent with future behavior when they don't agree with you. And bring that back to, how can you find out if you're being loved like Eros or Agape? Well, I'm going to suggest to you, these are some of the ways. Look, are they consistently looking out for your best interests or theirs? And look at that word, consistently. Observe how they consistently treat others. Have they trained their brain for taking or giving? In disagreements and walking through challenges together, are you respected? Are you allowed to disagree? And then take it slow in sharing your heart to gauge trustworthiness. Are they somebody who are going to use what you say against you? And then take it slow in being physically close to be able to keep a clear head. So how can I train my brain for great relationships? Well, practice loyal, caring, respectful, and trusting relationships with family and friends. When considering romance, connect emotionally to get to know that person, to build trust and respect before adding the physical. When you give up something now for something better later, it's not a sacrifice, actually. That's an investment. And realize, what if you're presently dating someone else's future spouse? What if the person you're dating right now is actually going to end up marrying your cousin? Will that change the way you would treat them? It really doesn't matter who you are, what you've done. All that matters is where you go from here. Some of you are feeling kind of sad that you didn't know this years ago. I get that all the time. In adult workshops, it's like, where were you 2 years ago? Or where were you 20 years ago? Or where, one lady came to me, she goes, where were you 30 years ago? I'm like, okay, what happened 30 years ago? I had just presented at a fundraiser, the physical triangle and the emotional triangle, the relationship triangle. And I'd done it 10 minutes really quick. And she said, nobody told me. Nobody told me that I could even wait. She goes, when I first met my first husband, we just raced down that physical triangle. We had to make sure that we were sexually compatible, right? That's important. All my friends were telling me, and sex was great. So we got married, and actually he was an abuser. And so there goes that first marriage. Second marriage, met a great guy, headed down that physical intimacy really quickly, had sex early on. And suddenly, after marriage, discover he's an addict. Okay, that's the second marriage gone. Third marriage, race down that line. He's somebody who cheats regularly. She goes, that's 3 marriages. If I had just been able to slow down and get to know him first, because I was infatuated and it was a rush and it was exciting, but if I had developed a friendship first, actually done the wish list, oh my goodness, I could have saved myself 3 divorces. I'm trying to make the most of my life, but this would have been so helpful. You get to decide what you want. But I do want you going away with an understanding of these things. You are worth waiting for. Sex is worth waiting for. You have what it takes to wait. And it is never too late to wait for what you really want. But while you're waiting, I don't expect you to sit twiddling your thumbs, right? Not just waiting. You're living. Remember? You're going on dates with people. You're planning things. You're living life. And as you are practicing to be the kind of person that you want to be with, you're preparing. You're developing the friendships around you. You are becoming the kind of person you like to be with. Healthy relationships kind of start with you. Thanks so much for spending this time. I know some of the information that you've heard is a lot to digest, and how you apply it is completely up to you. And I hope you know I deeply respect your ability to make choices for yourself. It's just, I want you to have the best information. Thanks so much. Bye.